Salamat everyone. My name is Ahmed. I'm Palestinian from Gaza, and today I had the privilege of speaking to Dr. Saira, who is an Australian doctor from Sydney, and she's currently working in Naser Hospital, Khan Younis in Gaza. So I hope you'll find my conversation with her quite useful and productive. We talked about the current situation in hospital and in Gaza in general and surrounding the area of Khan Younis.
How are you? How was your day? How's things before we start?
Yeah, I've made myself have a day off. We had a very busy day. When I finished the work that I organized, it was about 10:30 at night. And then when I came back to the accommodation, we have accommodation in the hospital. Some fighter jets going over. There was some emergencies in the theatre, which I was called to help with. So it turned out being quite late. And I've been in the hospital since about 5th or 6th of July now, and it's been pretty non-stop. So just making myself have a bit of time, just a little bit of time to rest, recover, and so I can carry on for the next 12 days or so that I'm here.
Yes. No, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to show the world what's happening on the ground in Gaza. It's just, I know you've been busy talking to other agencies as well, just explaining what's happening on the ground.
Yeah, it's almost indescribable. I almost don't have the words that, the situation it gets worse day by day. I'm sure you may have heard about 48 hours ago, Naser Hospital, where I'm based, was surrounded by the military. There was a ground incursion. There was a lot of bombing, a lot of shelling, a lot of quadcopter fire. A lot of patients and staff left the hospital because they didn't feel safe here. But leaving the hospital means going into a red zone where the area around the hospital is a red zone, which is an active military campaign going on. The tanks are now retreated. They've gone a little bit further east. We still are hearing bombs, but instead of being sort of 750 meters or a kilometer away, they're now about 4 or 5 kilometers away. But the blasts are quite big, shakes the building. And during that time that the hospital was surrounded, we actually didn't see that many casualties, and I'm not sure if that's because they weren't able to access the hospital because of the military, or that there literally was no one that needed to come to hospital because they'd all been killed. We're starting to see a trickle of people come in now from other field hospitals around. So I think over the next few days we'll see what the result of that ground incursion was. The target was a cemetery behind the hospital. I believe from what I've seen on social media, they exhumed the graves there, and they were looking for somebody amongst the bodies there. So things are a little bit less tense now than they were, but still as busy as ever. The medical staff here, both the local guys and the international delegations, there's about 20 of us from different international delegations staying at Naser. Yeah, we're getting on with the job. That's what we're here for. The supplies are limited, as you know, because of the ongoing blockade. Supplies were limited before that. I was here back in October last year, and supplies were limited then, but not as limited as to what they are now. We're able to function as doctors and other healthcare workers. We can function as a hospital, but nowhere near the standards that you would expect, nowhere near the standards that they have been operating, working at. Naser is a big hospital. It's been here for a long time. There's always been international training done. Excellent hospital with very high standards, but you can't meet that if you don't have the basic necessary things to carry out that task.
But when you say limited, because what we're hearing in the news, in the social media, of course, not in the mainstream media, does that mean that there is like medical supply flowing in, but they're not enough? Is the Israelis allowing anything to go in at the moment?
So, we certainly don't see trucks and trucks and trucks of medical supplies turning up. With what I do see is, shelves that are kind of haphazardly stocked with things that doctors have brought in themselves, with old things that have been brought in before. But, you know, very often we are making do with things rather than doing the job properly. So, for example, there's a lack of gauze, a lack of crepe bandages, a lack of burns dressings, things like that. There's a lack of certain types of anesthesia drugs. We can still give anesthesia. We're not at the stage where at Naser Hospital where we're having to operate without anesthesia, but we are having to compromise on how we do things. So where one operation you might be fully unconscious, we might have to do it where you're sort of in a twilight sleep, if you like. And this is not just for adults, this is for children. So, you know, we're working in a way where you would not accept that standard of care for your family, friends, or whoever. But we have no choice because we either do it or we don't. And so we choose to do it with the limited supplies that we have. And, you know, we learn a lot from the guys that have been doing this for 20 months. The local teams on the ground, they're exceptional. They're tired, they're hungry, their families are intense. They come to work every day. Some people come to work and they're not even paid. They come to work because for a couple of reasons, and they are extremely grateful and want to help the international delegates and be of assistance to them. They want to help their people. It's also a little bit more pleasant in a hospital that it is in a tent. It's extremely hot here at the moment and humid. You know, there's a bit of a breeze where I'm sitting at the moment, but if you imagine if you're in a tent encampment in nylon tents, it's horrifically hot and uncomfortable with no easy access to water. So medical students will keep turning up for their lectures. Doctors will keep turning up to work. You know, there's an incredible resilience there, and we learn a lot from them. And we're standing side by side with them, doing the best that we can.
I mean, okay, you've been in the hospital for probably a week now, probably over
a week.
Yeah, I mean, compared to your last time you were in Gaza last October or November, I mean, what difference can you sense in the psychology of people, in the nature of cases that you treat, in terms of, you know, the actual situation, the hospital itself, or the location that you were I don't know, deployed at? What's the difference from last time?
So when I was here in October last year, end of October, there were talks of an impending ceasefire. So there was an element of hope. There was an element of this is going to end soon. It can't go on much longer. And so people were a little bit more upbeat. It was like, okay, we're enduring right now, but it's going to finish. There was the whole Trump election campaign going on. Things were changing and moving. Things were happening, whether good or bad, but things were happening and moving. And we had the TV on 24/7. Right now, we don't have the TV on because people on the ground, they're not interested in what the politicians are talking about. They're not interested in what Trump is saying to Netanyahu in the White House right now. They're not interested in what's happening, what the Saudis are saying, what's happening in Iran. They just want to make sure they get home to their children. They just want to make sure that if there's flour in the market at whatever elevated price, that they have a chance to buy it. You know, when I refer back to managing patients, I'm not going to say suboptimally because we're doing it optimally with the equipment and things that we are allowed to have due to the Israeli blockade. Very often patients are left in a position where they will die because of the lack of supplies, because of the Israeli blockade. In another world, they would not die because we would have the correct things. But the attitude here is as well, you know, we're dying every day. If this person dies, they probably will die in another way. We're just all sitting here waiting to die. So the hope has just gone. The hope is extinguished. Everybody's just existing and really waiting to die. You know, when you ask people, oh, what about the talk of leaving, if there's a possibility to leave, they actually, when I was here in October, people would say, you know, I really want to stay in my land. I want to stay, this is my land. Now they're just like, yeah, if we can get out, I'll get my family out. Some people are like, I really don't care, just drop a bomb on us. So many people say, just drop a bomb on us and stop the suffering. We had a child, we did an operation on a child that was severely burnt couple of days ago, and the child was not waking up well after anesthesia, and I was concerned, and I was doing my best to you know, to sort this situation out. And somebody said to me, one of the local guys, he said, why are you investing so much time in that child? He said, children die every day, what's one more? And that's heartbreaking, and but true, you know, because the time I was using on this child was meaning I was limiting my time on another patient, and that's heartbreaking. That's how people are feeling.
You froze
That's
for a
it.
bit. You froze for a bit, Saira. Can you just repeat
Sorry.
the story?
Where were you? Which bit would you like me to come from, Ahmed?
The bit about the child that, someone was.
Yeah, yeah. So the child was being treated for severe burns and was taking a while to come out after the operation. So that's a bit concerning. And I was spending a lot of time with the child to try and rectify the situation. And one of the local staff here, one of the nurses, he said to me, "Well, why are you spending so much time with this child, sir? Children die in their hundreds every day here in Gaza. What's one more child?" And it wasn't said with any malice or anything. It was just a statement of fact. He said, "We've other work to do. We've dealt with this. Let's move on. If the child dies, the child dies. There's no ICU beds, Ahmed. We're patients who should be going to ICU are going to a normal surgical ward. They may die because of that compromise we have to make. We don't have ventilators. We don't have the right drugs to keep them sedated. We have children who are in ICU with breathing tubes in their throat that are awake, that are tied to the bed to stop them trying to pull the tube out. They're tied to the bed because we don't have sedation to keep them calm and, still. So they're tied to the bed by their hands, like shackled like prisoners. But it's for their safety. But that's the best that can be done at the moment because of the Israeli blockade on medication.
You mentioned you're in Naser Hospital. This is the hospital that a few months back where a drone actually went into one of the rooms and actually assassinated one of the injured journalists. His name was Hamza Slayih, I think. How are these operations happen? Are these operations still happening around hospital, assassinations or bombings around the hospitals?
Yeah, so like I say, 48 hours ago, we were totally surrounded by the military. There were quadcopters very, very close. We were told to get away from windows. We have a balcony that I'm on right now that we take the air on. We were told to come in. We were not allowed to go outside. We were told to definitely stay away from windows, and our movement was restricted. We were not allowed to move outside the hospital at all. And in fact, 2 people were killed within the hospital complex. I'm not sure, and I will just this is just conjecture, possibly by quadcopter fire. I don't know if they were staff or patients. I imagine they were just, but there's a lot of displaced people that are actually in the compound of Naser. They weren't in October, it wasn't allowed. It was quite an isolated compound because it had to be rebuilt after the January siege. But now there's a lot more displaced people. I know that one took a bullet to the head and the other one took a bullet to the chest and one died. Now, the playbook of the IDF is headshots and spine shots. I don't know if that was deliberate or not. I'm still trying to find out that information, but we know that one person died from that. And that was because of quadcopter fire inside Naser complex.
And this is a recurring incident. I mean, many doctors have reported finding cases where gunshot to the chest and to the head in children, actually in hospitals, when there was a ground incursion around hospitals and around the areas. I mean, are these things are still happening because there's not much of a withdrawal of the forces now outside of Gaza, as we saw during the Hudna. So before the kind of injuries, there were just bombings or shelling from quadcopters and F-16s. I mean, what kind of injuries now are you seeing?
So we collect a lot of data. Each organization will collect data, and essentially we will classify the data that we collect into either gunshot, explosive injury, or road traffic accident. Those are the major traumas that are happening. And I think I've seen 3 people all in the space of 3 days that have all been shot from GHF. So last night, two actually, I had a 14-year-old girl shot at GHF site, a 14-year-old girl with learning difficulties, shot through the abdomen. She's alive, but she's got terrible injuries to her bowel, big exit wound from the back, big gaping hole at the back, small hole from front. There was a young man in his 20s. He was shot small, tiny. You could hardly see the entry wound. I don't know what these weapons are. You can hardly see. It's like a little dot. But when you look at the back, the whole of the back of his head is just blasted. That was a GHF shooting. Last night, I believe there was another child that was also having a procedure for being shot. I don't know if that was a GHF. So we see a lot of that. We're seeing a lot of that. We've explosive injuries, crush injuries, burns, so much burns. And it's usually the little children because people are living in nylon tents. So when a nylon tent goes on fire, it will immediately ignite the next tent and the next tent. We had, when the Israelis were surrounding us 48 hours ago, there was a huge pall of black smoke just on the horizon, and it was like a tent, we call it a tent village for want of a better description. Just, and there's no road, there's no water for the civil defense to get there to put this fire out, so it just has to burn out. And then you'll see, you know, on social media, the charred remains of these tent camps and people, and the burns are horrific. And we don't have burns dressings, we don't have burns antibiotics, we've got burns plastic surgeons, we've got burns critical care specialists, but we don't have the right stuff to deal with it. So we're using what we have, what we bring. And it's children, mothers and children, and you will see at prayer time, Fajr prayer time, it's almost like clockwork. That's when, if it's been quiet for a while, up the bombings ramp up because people are gathered together. The other thing they do is they'll have internet outages. So when there's an internet outage, people will gather at internet cafes outside. So people are gathering, and then that's when they will strike. Nighttime, when often in the ED at night time, the types of injuries and people coming in, it's mothers that were having their children sleeping next to them. You know, I had a terrible case of a woman when she came in, just rushed through the theatre to my theatre. One leg was literally hanging off. You could have blown on it, it would have fallen off. But she then vomited her food, that she vomited out her food that she had spent so hard trying to find. And even that came out of her. And one of the managements that we do is we actually have to suction the stomach clean. So I was there taking the food out of her stomach to keep her lungs safe. That is the kind of, you know, we can't think about these things. But here, as the people on the ground, we can't think, we just have to keep the patient safe and do the best to our ability. But when you actually think about the minutiae of when you get down to what you're actually doing and why this has happened, it's unforgivable.
It's just hard to believe, like you mentioned, that these things are happening under the watch of the world. I mean, the internet cafes that you just mentioned, people are actually gathering, the youth are gathering to connect to the internet to see what's happening on the ground, to see what's happening in the world. Is the world is caring, and also to relay the image and report. And I think that's why they get targeted eventually.
100%. Yeah, and you know, a lot of the time the guys gathering there are male, they're young, and so if you ask the IDF playbook why they've targeted that area, you know what they'll say. But you know, that's what happens with an internet outage. Plus we haven't had a planned one. There was a threat of an internet outage, and lo and behold, the next day we had an incursion, the ground incursion. The internet outage actually didn't happen. But whenever they threatened that, the Ministry of Health or the Paltel Authority, which runs the telecommunications, we're like, oh, okay, something's about to go down.
You mentioned the Gaza humanitarian distribution areas, and you know those sort of weapons that you're using. You'd never seen something like this before. I mean, Anthony Lowenstein wrote a book about the Palestine Laboratory. Yeah, they're actually experimenting weapons on Palestinians. Well, I mean, what more do you hear from your side about this side? I mean, what kind of legitimacy does it carry?
Look, when I was here in October and with my surgical colleagues, there were many. I saw these the things that we were taking out of people's bodies weren't bullets. They weren't disfigured pieces of shrapnel of metal. They were smooth, manufactured sort of quadrilateral shapes. They were, you know, that's not shrapnel, that's not a piece of rock, that's not a bit of twisted metal, that's not, you know, something that's flown up from the ground and entered the body. So we have no idea, but what we do know is that they cause maximum damage. So they cause a huge amount of damage. And this is what I often say to people: when you look on social media and you see all the children brought in from whatever disaster strike has happened, you'll see people lift up their clothes and lift the top up and pull their, you know, shorts down, because they're looking for any sign of they're looking first for a big injury, but if there's no sign of that, they will check for any small, like a pinprick size, even bigger. because that, if you turn the child over, there may be a big exit wound, or there is massive internal injuries that's not obvious from the small entry wound. And we're just like, we don't see this. The other thing we're seeing is a lot of injuries to specific areas where there are big arteries. Now they know where these bullets are going. They're going to where they're going to inflict damage on an artery. That after about 3 to 5 minutes, you'll bleed out and die. And they're precise. It's precisely in those areas, but the groin, in the armpit. It's manufactured, engineered, and designed. It's not just random shooting. Yes, there are some stray bullets that happen, but we see these, to me, intentional, deliberate, targeting of areas of the body to put people that they will die quickly.
I mean, and in terms of, is there any people around the hospital? Are they sheltering around the hospital as we hear, or are they predominantly around the Mawasi area, which is along the coast?
No, so when I was here in October, as I say, so in January 2024, there was a big incursion of the IDF. They came and bulldozed people into the sand. They were a tent city inside the complex. And the tent city comprised of people, their families, people receiving IV fluids or IV medication. Can you still hear me okay? Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. And they just brought the bulldozers in, bulldozed the people into the sand, and I'll show you the site of what the mass grave was. You'll see there's some buses there now, but this is where they dug it up and they've leveled it. So this was the site of where they dug up 300 or so bodies that were literally bulldozed into the ground. These were people sheltering in tents. It's now been cleared up and made into an area for the buses that bring in the staff who come in for the day shift. So staff from tent areas come in by buses day 7 till 2, and they go again. So in January, this incursion happened, and then the hospital, there were so many abductions, tortures. Every other doctor knows someone or has been detained, tortured, abducted, questioned. Did you treat Hamas? Did you treat hostages? Tortured in ways that men and women shouldn't be tortured. I hear them tell me. And still they come back to work. So anyway, the hospital was put back online in around May 2024, and one of the agreements is that to limit the number of displaced people, because obviously if you have displaced people here, it legitimizes again any strike, any attack, because they're going to say, well, these people, that person's Hamas, this person's right. So, but now there are many more displaced people here. So if I'm leaving a theatre in another building on the complex at night, there are just people everywhere. People sleeping on the floor, women, children, men, some people in hospital beds, some people on the ground, some people just roaming around inside the complex. There used to be a press area where Al Jazeera, a couple of the Palestine Today, other news organizations would be. But since that attack on the tent and the assassination, they've gone from here. So we actually haven't seen any journalists around the Naser area.
Yeah, yes, I've been seeing the Al Jazeera report, and none of them is actually reporting from Mustashfa Naser, and that's Naser Hospital, and that's probably why. But I mean, how is the mental health of the nurses and doctors around you, the Palestinians? I mean, you mentioned that there is no hope. They're just working tirelessly, and that's all. They're not even thinking about what might happen in the future.
What else are they going to do? If they don't turn up to work, they're just going to sit in the tent and listen to the bombs. So they may as well come to the work, keep their mind busy, keep active, even though it means they might be away from their children. Often, women, if there's no other caregiver, are leaving their children in the tent. So the oldest child is looking after young children. But, you come to work, you may get paid, you may not. There may be an option to take some bread home. Somebody might give you something for your child or something. But at least you have a purpose for your day if you come to work. Healthcare workers, we have always, our life is purpose in our work. So people come, but their movements are tired, they're exhausted. My friends I'm seeing, they lost so much weight. Nobody's looking healthy. They're just in a constant state of low anxiety and despair. Everybody needs mental health help here. I come here for a short period of time, and I need time to decompress when I leave, like when I get home. I'm lucky I get to leave. This is their life. They don't, there's no, that people are saying post-traumatic stress disorder. That doesn't exist here because there's no post. Like we've heard this before, there's no post. Every day is trauma. Every day in one form or another. Whoever you are here.
Yeah. I mean, recently the BBC was stopped from releasing a film called Gaza Doctors Under Attack, and it documents, that doctors and nurses have been targeted and ambulance workers and so on and so forth. I mean, how easy for ambulance workers and nurses and doctors actually move from a bombing site into taking injuries into the hospital? How easy that movement is?
There's these guys, the civil defense guys, actually just before I came across a documentary on Al Jazeera. It was about the civil defense forces. I can't remember what it's called, but look it up. It basically just had a guy with a camera next to them doing all this, and you should see it. I can't remember what it's called, but it's on Al Jazeera English. There's no roads. The roads are sand. So if you imagine you've got a heavy vehicle like an ambulance or something like that, it's got to get through that. It's got to get through what there used to be streets here. Now there's sand. It's got to do it under potential quadcopter fire. It's got to do the roads when the road, I'll call it a road, is maybe blocked with donkey carts, water trucks, people. It's not like you can just zoom there in 10 minutes. A journey that should take 10 minutes can take you 2 hours because it's stop, start, stop, start. Divert, you might have to divert because there's an issue in your route. For the international doctors, we aren't allowed to move unless we have coordination with COGAT and the Israeli authorities. So we are wherever we are, we don't move unless we have approval to move. So the people who aren't international doctors or international workers, aid workers, they're just moving freely with the dangers from the skies or the ground. And the civil defense guys are moving into zones that may actively be targeted again. As we know, they do a double tap. They'll bomb somewhere, the civil defense comes in, they bomb it again. And these buildings are hugely unstable, and they still go in there under the rubble in their bare hands, bringing people out. One of our coordinators the night before last, at 3 o'clock in the morning, his sister and her children were under the rubble. Thank God they just got out with minor injuries and some, dust in their lungs. But, there's hundreds of people under that rubble that they can't get out because they have to prioritize the living. And then when there's peace, they can go back and try and get the dead.
You said something that really impacted me a lot. You said there used to be streets there, now they're sand. I mean, I'm from Khan Younis. I probably went to school 5 minutes away from you. I mean, I know you probably don't want to be asked this question, but why are you doing this? Why are we?
There is no question for me to do it. I don't have a choice. I have the skill that is needed here. I feel like it's a duty for me. There's no question about why. I mean, why wouldn't I? Well, if you can, why wouldn't you? This is a huge injustice. It's a huge injustice that should not be happening to this extent. It shouldn't be happening at all. To blockade baby formula, to take baby formula from a doctor to just bring it to a child, to blockade medicines, to torture people, to displace them. For what reason? And to torture them if you think of every single aspect of life, there is an element of designed architecture to torture people. And I can't watch an injustice like that. And if there's something I can do, and I'm very blessed and humbled to be able to give my skills here, and you know what? If there's nothing else to do, I'll help clean the floors in theatre. I'll help push the patient across the wards. To me, there's no, I don't have an option. I have to be here. If I can be here, I'll be here. That's the best I can say.
Such a, I don't want to say an honorable, it is an honorable thing, but it's also humane, and everyone, like you mentioned, it's why wouldn't you want to do it as a human? But tell me about the process, like how did you actually end up going into Gaza? You mentioned you flew to Jordan, and then from there you took the bus. Like how easy or difficult the journey was?
So it used to be much easier back before I think March they took the Rafah crossing in March 2024. Israeli took control of the Rafah crossing. Before the entry was through Egypt to Rafah. And if you think about the logistics of this, on one side you've got the Egyptians, and the other side you have the Palestinians. Okay, so a lot more bags. A doctor could bring 20 bags if you want. There were certain cross-border checks, but it was a little bit easier to cross. Now, this is taking of the Rafah border. We have to travel to Amman in Jordan. We then take a bus to the Jordan side of what's called the Allenby or the King Hussein Bridge, which is a bridge across into the West Bank. On the other side of that, so one side is Jordanian. We have all our checks on the Jordan side, and then we go to the Israeli side, the occupier side, where there are more intense checks on your baggages. They have a bit more control on that side of the border. So, you know, if they want to rip your bag open, if they want to stop you coming in, that's where they can do it. In the Rafah border, they couldn't do it. There was no presence there. It was just Egyptian and then Palestinian. There, it's Jordanian and Israeli. So very often you don't hear that you're going into Gaza until the night before. We actually heard quite earlier about 4 p.m. Sometimes it's at 10 p.m. the night before, and you have to be up to catch a 6 a.m. bus to the Allenby Bridge with your luggage. You get off this bus, you go through the check, you get onto another bus, you then wait for a few hours at the Israeli side where they take all your passports. Last time I came, I was detained and questioned for about 45 minutes, and all my luggage was open. This time I was very fortunate. I managed to go through without any issue. But a friend of mine, a surgeon, she's at Al-Shifa Hospital, she got through all the passport control, etc., etc. And just as she was getting on the bus, she got pulled back by one of the Israelis to check her backpack. So, you know, there are these, you are under scrutiny and surveillance, and you feel very uncomfortable. You're meant to feel very uncomfortable. Then you take a bus. It used to be down to the Kerem Shalom crossing. It took about 4 hours. Now it takes about 2.5 hours to the Kisufim crossing, which is not too far, which is near Deir el-Balah, which is not a longer journey. And then you transfer to a guest house. And all this movement is coordinated with the WHO and the Israelis so that they know you're coming. You're in UN armored vehicles and you move in a convoy. However, you're not a car doesn't protect you from a missile. A car doesn't protect you from an accident bombing. Yeah. And then you transfer to your own NGO, and then you usually go to another safe house for another night, and then you get to the hospital. We were actually prevented from moving to the hospital for one whole day because it was the day that they were trying to evacuate a dead soldier, and there were airstrikes the whole day. So we actually lost one whole day of working. So, you know, 3 specialists that have come, one whole day we missed from being at the hospital simply because we couldn't move because it was too dangerous because of them trying to evacuate their dead soldier.
Yes, I mean the area around you is like it's a hotbed for so many operations at the moment, especially because I'm hearing these incursions are more recurring into Khan Younis. I mean, you showed us the tents around the hospital around you. Are these tents for people who live there, or was it?
No, so that tent that actually was erected when I was here in October last year, and it was erected for when I was here in October last year. It was fairly quiet in terms of military incursion because they were all in the north at the time. They were leveling the north. So this tent was set up to evacuate children from hospitals in the north, the Kamal Adwan, all the hospitals up there, to here as a stop point before they get medevaced out to Romania. So all the children, one night, 7 ambulances turned up, and out of each ambulance must have come out 25 children and 3 adults in each one, as a stopping point before they went out through I think they were using the Rafah crossing at the time to medevac people out, I think. And one night, these children all got back in the bus, ready to go. And then later on in the night, they returned because they were refused to leave by the Israelis. So twice, I think, that convoy got turned back. Eventually, they made it out. Now it's actually just an extension of a medical ward. So that is a medical ward now behind it that I showed you.
Like a makeshift kind of.
Yeah, but it's run very well. I mean, it has, you know, needle disposal areas. It has running water. It has proper doctors there, beds, cots lined up. So it's the best you can have as a field. It's like a field clinic, field ward.
Yes, yeah. I mean, what else can you tell me? It's really horrible. I mean, I do want to, relay this image of what's happening to the world, but we just feel that it's hopeless. I mean, people are
I'll
just,
just, I'll just, I'll just move inside. We don't often have the azan so close. I think there's a guy. I think there's a recently we're seeing this quite a lot where the azan is in a mobile bus or something that's very loud. I mean, our balcony faces the morgue. The morgue has usually got tens and tens of people every morning. They've got a makeshift mosque because they were doing the prayers for the martyrs in the street. But because it was so frequent and recurrent, they made a makeshift tent mosque.
Mm.
And there's never not people there looking for their martyred families. Never.
There's
Never.
no time to keep them in the morgue because, to identify them or to wait for people to come and recognize them. I guess they just bury them straight away without knowing who they are.
Well, they look to the extent that they will wait for people to come and identify them if that's possible. Sometimes there's no time. Sometimes there's no time. I mean, the actual place where they prepare the bodies is beautiful. It's marble. They do everything in accordance with Islam for the martyr, as we call it, the shaheed. And it's a marble place. It's full of light. But then directly past that is like this the steel shelves where the bodies are just lined up. Children, wrapped in the rugs that you see on the social media. If you're not bleeding, you get wrapped in linen as per Islam. If you are severely injured, you go into a plastic bag. What can I say?
Mm. They say that this is a war on children. I mean, out of the injuries and the people who have been martyred around you, I mean, what is the percentage of children or, I mean, and another question I really want to ask you, like we're seeing this, hearing all this propaganda from the Israeli side saying that, half of those numbers released by the Gaza government are actually Hamas operatives or soldiers, or Hamas members. I mean, can you verify any of that? Like, did you see any militants being transferred to the morgue or being treated in hospitals?
Well, I just wonder how they know who is Hamas. I couldn't tell you. I see a young man. I see an older woman. I see a 3-year-old child. I just see people. I don't see people with guns. I don't see people with grenades. I don't see people with rocks. I don't see people with headbands. I don't see that. I just see people, broken, battered, mutilated, shattered people. I don't know what they are. I don't know what faction, if they belong to anything. I don't know what they are. I couldn't tell you. You wouldn't know. How do
Mm,
they know? I tell you something though, a 3-year-old child is not a militant. I know that for a fact. An old lady is not a militant. I know that for a fact. She's not a risk. She may be in her mind, but she's not out there using launching rockets. And we often hear this line that this strike was in this area because Hamas was launching grenades. And I'll be like, but I was just sitting there watching that area for the last hour, and I didn't see a thing except an F-16 Hellfire missile come down. I can only tell you what I see,
mm,
and that's what I see and what I don't see.
mm. Yeah, it's just efforts to justify their killing of 90% probably civilians. Who knows, like you said, you don't really receive someone, like you mentioned, strapped with hand grenades and stuff. You don't see any of these things. And that's also the testimony of other doctors, as I'm hearing in the news. They never see any Hamas militants.
I just see people. I just see people trying to live, trying to survive, trying to find food. I see beautiful, kind people. People who will insist that I drink their cup or taste their coffee before they drink it. That will insist on breaking their small piece of bread with me. That will insist that I sit in the chair even though they're exhausted. That bring me gifts from the small things that they have. That's what I see.
Mm, yeah. How are you faring? How are you?
I'm very happy to and very grateful that I have the chance to be here. I walked into the hospital grounds, within 10 seconds, somebody's Dr. Saira, somebody called out to me. And ever since then, I've been among friends, I've been among my colleagues that, we've been in contact from last time. I hope that I can, whatever small difference I can make, it helps somebody, something, whether that be a patient, whether that be my colleague sitting next to me, whether that be the man trying to clean the floor. I'm just humbled and very grateful that I have the chance to be here, because it's not easy to get here. It's not easy to get here. And I'm tired, but I get to go home. I get to go home to my life of privilege.
Yes.
I get to rest. I get to eat foods. I get to have the best medical care.
Like you mentioned, at least you have a horizon to what you're going through. I mean, of course, you look at the cases and the injuries and the suffering of the people. You also suffer yourself, but like I said, you have a horizon for that. You're going home in, I don't know, 2 3
This is suffering for me. This is a blessing for me to be here. I'm not suffering. These people are suffering.
Mhm. Yeah. How long is your stay in Naser Hospital?
Too short, unfortunately. Just 3 weeks in total. But I've already got plans for coming back. They're already in the pipeline. I've been in touch with various organizations to get back. If the ceasefire doesn't happen, hopefully next time I come back, it's to a different Gaza where the ceasefire has happened and there's some positive movement. That's what I hope for.
Mm. I hope so too. Well, we're lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have you, really. Thank you so much, I mean, for your time. And please stay in touch, and let's do more of these conversations at some point before you go. So you mentioned you have 3 weeks, so you probably like you're coming back next month.
End of the month, I've got end of the month, 24th of July, exit Gaza to Oman. So
That's very soon. That's very soon.
too soon.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully we can do another one, Sarah, in the
For
future.
sure.
Please look after yourself and stay safe and
Thank
stay
you.
in touch, and hopefully we'll do another one soon.
Lovely to speak to you.
Same here. Take care. Salam.